A final question for both of you. Why are you Christian? Someone asked that, and let me put a particular spin on it. What does the scientific evidence that we've been talking about tonight have to do with you being a Christian? I know it's a big question, but you can answer it briefly. Let's start. You want to start?
Do you want to go first?
You only have 2 minutes.
This is quite a question. So, who's going first on this one?
If you want to go first, you can.
Oh, okay. Well, I think there are 2 ways or levels on which you can answer this. One would be the kind of existential level, and then the other would be the intellectual level. I think intellectually, I have always had a sense that God exists. From my youngest boyhood, I remember looking out at the stars at night and thinking, where did all of this come from? And as I contemplated the idea of an infinite past going back and back without beginning, it just seemed inconceivable to me that this could regress infinitely without a beginning. There had to be a beginning for everything to get started. And so it always seemed to me that there had to be some sort of a creator and designer of the cosmos. But I just didn't know him personally. I had no relationship with this transcendent being. On an existential level, it wasn't until I was in high school that I began to search for the meaning and purpose of my existence and ask, why am I here? Who am I? What's the reason for being? And frankly, I couldn't find any. I later read the French existentialists, in college, and found out that I was experiencing at that time this sort of darkness and despair that existentialist philosophers talked about, the absurdity of life. And I deeply felt that blackness and that meaninglessness of life, until a girl who sat in front of me in my German class, a radiant Christian, shared with me about God's love that could be found through Jesus Christ, and that I could know God in a personal way through Christ. I'd never heard this before. I went home, I got a New Testament, and I began to read it. And as I did, I was absolutely captivated by the person of Jesus of Nazareth. There was a wisdom about his teachings that I had never encountered before, and there was an authenticity about his life that was so attractive, so incredibly magnetic that I couldn't deny. And this went on for about 6 months. I went through a period of the most intense soul searching I've ever been through in my life. I read books. I met other Christians in the high school. I'd never met people like this, and they seemed to be connected with a different plane of reality than I was, that I didn't even dream existed, a reality that gave a deep existential meaning and significance to their lives. And so after about 6 months of just intense searching, I just came to the end of my rope and cried out to God, and I yielded my life to Him and asked Christ to be the Savior of my life and the Lord of my life, and I became a Christian in that moment. That was on September 11th of 1965 that event occurred, and it changed my life, and my studies as a philosopher and as a theologian are simply an expression of that decision that was made then as a young man. I have found that you can love God with all your mind as well as with all your heart, and that He meets the needs of your intellect as well as the needs of your heart. And so I am enthusiastically a Christian, both intellectually as well as existentially.
September 11. Think about curious coincidences. For me, as I see it, religious faith can be the source of motivation to study the world of nature, to do science, and to try to find out more about this wonderful world in which we live. And on the other direction, I think that the beauty of the world, which despite of all the things that happen, we have this tremendous beauty with thousands and thousands of millions of species and all this dynamic process. I see that as a source of religious inspiration. So science can have faith, and having faith, I think, is a motivation to do science.
thank you very much, Professor Ayala, Professor Craig, Professor Monton.